A lot of you asked why there are pennies or stones on graves that I visited, so here's a quick video on grave offerings. There aren't many rules to what you can leave, but most commonly a penny is left to let the family know you visited. The Jewish tradition was always to leave a pebble, although other cultures have adopted it. The offering does not have to be monetary. It could be food such as nuts or an apple or simply a pretty stone. You can also choose crystals for magical properties. Always check with the cemetery before leaving something at the grave, especially if it's glass or if you plan on planting flowers. Also, never take anything from a grave. It's not yours, it's meant to thank the person for your visit. Today I'm taking you to another famously haunted place in Connecticut. This location was requested a ton and it was my first time here. This is the Seventh-day Baptist Cemetery in Burlington, Connecticut. It is famously known as the location where people see the Green Lady of Burlington. I didn't see her when I was here, but I did notice a lot of the stones were worn away and there was a ton of vandalism. You can no longer visit her grave because someone stole it in 2010. This is why I fully support frequenting and photographing cemeteries.
My friend and I just had a creepy experience at this haunted cemetery in Texas. Here he is, his name's Henry, he goes by Keeper the Second. Here's me, and we went to the cemetery to visit the hanging tree, which actually was the location of the first burial in the cemetery, and they used to lynch people on this tree. It was pretty gnarly history, but we parked my car in the cemetery, got out the ghost hunting gear, and then headed over to the hanging tree to try and communicate with whoever may be sticking around. Here's me with the Mel meter. This thing picks up electromagnetic fields, which spirits are supposed to give off, but it didn't hit at all. We asked questions, and it was surprising that nothing happened while we were sitting at the hanging tree where all these people died. You'd think that it would. But after a while of sitting here, we ended up feeling this really weird energy almost calling our name from the other side of the cemetery in the back, near the woods. And we walked over to check out what was over there, and this is where the story gets really creepy. I'm going to be uploading multiple parts to this TikTok series, but we found some weird stuff, and welcome to part 2 of my scary experience at this haunted cemetery in Texas. So my friend and I felt compelled to go over to this part of the cemetery, and we found out that it was an old pioneer cemetery. There were weird little bells and trinkets hanging all over the rusted cemetery gates, and when we got inside, we didn't realize, but there are about 100 graves in this area, but they're all broken. So going with the theory that if tombstones and grave sites are, vandalized, that the spirits wake up and haunt the area, we used the EMF meter, and it actually hit a couple of times, which you're seeing right here on camera. It didn't do that in the other part of the cemetery, and this area had a different vibe. We asked some questions and kept hearing some noises, and we eventually went to the back part of the cemetery, outside of the cemetery gates, because once again we felt like we needed to go over there. When we were crawling around the woods, we found a bunch of weird stuff like seashells. People often leave seashells at graves, and it was weird to find those things outside of the cemetery gates, almost like there's some lost graves back there. And we found all types of animal bones laying everywhere, so death has marked this area. But it's in the third part when we had contact. So after exploring this haunted abandoned cemetery for a while, we decided to walk back into the cemetery gates. We kept finding some weird stuff, and as we were searching the perimeter, we once again found something that looked like a grave outside of the gates in the woods. We walked over to it, leaving the cemetery, and I used one of my ghost hunting devices, and as you can see here in this footage, it was spiking as I held it near the supposed grave. We were hearing these weird kind of calls and chants from the woods. I don't know if they were coyotes or what, but as we entered the cemetery again from outside, we just had this really eerie vibe. I don't know if it's the fact that all of the graves in here were destroyed and people had been vandalizing the area, but the woods seemed to be active as hell. There was definitely an energy to this place, and we didn't even intend on coming here. We were going to the hanging tree, but we asked some more questions, didn't get any responses, but the fact that we got to explore this beautiful abandoned old cemetery in the woods was interesting and fun. We decided to head out. We went back to my car, saw the hanging tree, and said peace out to the spirits.
Well, this one is interesting. I've never seen anything like this before.
While I was investigating at Park Cemetery in Fairmount, Indiana, I kept hearing what I thought sounded like a baby crying, so I had to investigate. I was led to this metal baby crib. The name on the crib was Sharon. She was born in 1944 and died in 1944. I think she led me here so she could be heard. Rest in peace, Sharon.
Can you talk to us again? Can you come through and talk to me again? It said stop. Did you hear that?
I can't hear it now. I'm too far away. You say hello?
Yes. Hello, hi. You want to talk with us? Can you touch our bear over here? It's a ghost. Can you say that again? Did you say ghost? Are you at peace? Can you talk with us again? A lot of things are coming through. Like for part 2.
I wanted to show you guys this time that I caught an actual ghost on camera at a cemetery. My friend and I went to this place called the Boston Mills Cemetery, and there's so many graves there that are from the 1800s. We were exploring and filming there for about half an hour. I didn't see anything really creepy, so we decided to go home. I ended up uploading all of that footage to my YouTube channel, didn't think anything was wrong. About a month later, I got a DM from somebody that told me there was a ghost in the graveyard standing behind us. Now at first, I didn't believe her really, but I went to the exact timestamp that she told me, and there, standing behind my friend Matt, was this ghost. It almost looks like he's wearing a suit, he has like a white face, and he's just standing there behind the fence. And what's creepy is that there was no one there that day, guys. There was absolutely nobody. And to this day, the image of this guy still haunts me. We went back there one day to find him, but that'll be part 2. This is part 2 to the previous video about how we caught that ghost in the cemetery. A year later, my husband and I decided to go back to see if we could find him. But the second I stepped foot in this cemetery, I felt so sick and really weird. So I immediately told my husband that I wanted to go home and I did not want to be there. It was raining so hard on the way home, it was storming, and the whole way back, I felt like we were being followed. That night when I went to bed, I had the weirdest dream of my life. The dream was that I was lying in my bed, and all around my room, there were these spirits walking towards my bed, and they were all standing around the bed just looking at my husband and I. Well, in the morning, I woke up to my husband yelling for me. When I went downstairs, his face was pale, and he told me that when he went to go back to the car, he saw that all the doors of the car were open. All the windows were turned down. Even the sunroof was open, and it made me think that spirits must have followed us home.
There was a time when the fear of being buried alive was legitimate. Doctors couldn't always tell the difference between a coma and actual death, which led to some people waking up inside their own coffins. To avoid that, safety coffins were designed. A rope would be strung from the coffin to a bell above ground, letting anyone nearby know someone was still alive. One grave in Savannah's Bonaventure Cemetery still has a bell attached. You can see it on the side of the Charles F. Mills plot. But if you hear that bell ring, don't answer it. Charles has been dead since 1876.
This forgotten little cemetery rests just outside of Vienna, Austria, and is said to be quite haunted. It is known as the Cemetery of the Nameless and holds a pretty grim past. During the 1800s, the main river to cut through this area was often filled with bodies of people who had drowned, committed suicide, or just died of uncertain reasons. Since most of these people were never identified and couldn't be interred in any of the city's Catholic burial places, they were brought here by respectful locals. Almost 500 bodies are buried in this area, though most of them are unmarked. Today, the quaint cemetery holds just over 100 markers, with 61 of them remaining unnamed. Many people who have visited have heard unexplained voices, seen apparitions, and even shadow figures. Could this be those buried here hoping to be remembered in some way? Full videos on the Amy's Crypt YouTube channel.
In my last viral video, I went to a haunted bridge and recorded my experience. You guys seem to enjoy it, so today I'm gonna step it up. So I looked up the most haunted places in the Midwest, and I came across this cemetery about 2 hours away from me. I hit up my friend Braden, and we were off. Legend has it that buried in the cemetery is a young boy named Lester. His gravestone has nothing more than his name, year of death, and the engraving, never at rest.
So we just arrived, but we have to go about half a mile into the forest to get to the actual cemetery.
There's also been many sightings of a woman assumed to be his mother who visits the grave and can be seen weeping on a nearby tree stump.
I'm freaking out because that's the stump you're supposed to see the ghost on. I'm so scared, bro. Like, off camera, bro, I'm scared.
Going in, we did find the grave, but we were too uncomfortable to directly approach it.
I can read the name, that's the one.
Bro, shit, low-key feels really weird here.
Here is part 2 of my experience going to one of the most haunted cemeteries in the Midwest. In the last video, I explained that an apparition of a ghost can be seen on this log. So my friend Braden purchased an EMF reader and decided to test it on the stump. Nothing unusual happened, but I did have trouble exporting the footage when I got home.
of the stops on the grave tour today is the grave of Priscilla McNeil. She passed away when she was only 18, and her mother was so distraught. Her father had the McNeil house built, and every day Priscilla's mother came to see her. During the Civil War, General Grant even issued Priscilla's mother a special pass so she could cross the picket lines to continue her tradition of seeing Priscilla.